everybody, to DAT Poker Podcast, episode number 10 for Halloween 2018. I'm your host, Dave Schwartz, alongside Roscoe P. Coltrane.
Hello, boys and girls.
And T. Chan and Daniel LeGrand from Las Vegas. Boys, how are you?
Doing good. I apologize in advance. I am battling the allergies, so I'm going to try to make sure I get to the mute button before any projectile snot comes out of my nose.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I didn't realize it, but the last 2 days I've had allergies too, and I don't know. I thought it was normal, but I guess it's allergies, right?
Ugh.
That's a thing. I forgot.
Yeah, it's like we're obviously located in exactly the same location. We're subject to exactly the same allergies.
Yeah.
What are you guys, allergic to candy? So to kids having fun? What is it?
I'm guessing fun in my case. Yeah. That's probably it.
No, I'm going with a boring answer. I think it's wind over here. It's been really windy in Vegas for the last 2 days.
Okay, so I know Terrence is off in the middle of nowhere, so you're going to get no kids to your house for trick-or-treating. Daniel, are you in a popular area for trick-or-treating?
Oh, God, no. No, I live in boring community with really old, stale white people up in Summerlin. And I don't even think there are trick-or-treaters, really. I think they do a party within the community that I've never attended or anything, but I'll just turn the lights down low and hide in my house. And if any kids come, I'll I'll have from, what was that movie, from what do you call it, Home Alone. I'll have the sounds of the TV with gunshots and shit ready to go in case they try to enter the gate.
You have zero candy available to be trick-or-treated for?
Yeah, no, I'm not, whatever. I do. What I was thinking was raisins and apples, because I think kids really like that. They prefer that, right? So I'm gonna do apples and raisins and maybe some plant protein. I'm gonna do some Vega One plant protein.
Vegan snacks.
Some cricket bars.
Yeah.
Halloween's the weirdest holiday. I mean, people come from a different culture, come to North America, and they're told that they need to send their kids out in disguise to beg for candy. It's just the weirdest thing.
I mean, there was a time, I remember when I was a kid, where there was this whole fear, right? Because it was it happened maybe once in 30 years where some creepy dude would put razor blades in people's candy. So then, mothers and stuff, they would x-ray all the candy and everyone was really paranoid. But I mean, it is, you are taking a risk, right? Sending your kids to random houses and then someone gives them candy. They could have anything in them. You don't know these people, and sinister people could do dumb shit. But I guess that's true of, that could happen anywhere, but
I'm not even sure if it did actually happen once. I mean, I feel like this is just one of these things that people worry about that somebody could do. But I mean, realistically, if there was a house that was just poisoning all the candy, it would be so trivially easy for the cops to figure out which house it was.
Not really, man. Remember all that old shit candy that had the camera that was all the Halloween wrapper that we had for 7 years? My mom gave out the same shit candy for 7 years and whatever. And it's a lot of people gave out that same exact shit candy. I mean, I don't know that it would be all that easy to figure out.
It's possible. I mean, you just have to trace the flurry of deaths around the neighborhood and, sort of retrace them. And their parents probably knew which route they took. I feel like it's likely that they could narrow it down to 7 or 8 houses. And then from there, I don't know. Maybe I have more trust in the ability of cops to figure out what's going on than maybe it's misplaced, but I don't know. I feel like they could. I'd like to think that they could. And I'd like to think that nobody is actually stuffed a razor in an apple. I'm sure if somebody finds a link to that, they'll happily point it out to me. But I'd like to think that's never actually happened. It was sort of like that. When I was young, it was that whole if some car is driving on the other driving the other way and is driving with its lights off, you don't high beam them because it's a gang initiation, which I always thought was possibly the stupidest gang initiation in the history of the universe. Because why would you do that? What gang needs you to just murder random people for high beaming them that your lights are on?
Yeah, so just to counter all this Halloween negativity, in my neighborhood, tons of kids, it's awesome. There's houses, one guy turns his garage into a dungeon with, people jump out at you and there's eyeballs hanging from the ceiling and the kids love it. It's hilarious. And then there's a guy who dresses up as the Jason character, but he walks around the neighborhood with a fake chainsaw that makes a bunch of noise. Scares the shit out of the kids too. It's kind of fun.
I think in a haunted house, my friend went to, they had a guy with a chainsaw, but they just basically they didn't. It was a real like functionally operating chainsaw, but without the part that'll kill you.
Right.
And it just came and jumped out and scared him. But it's still like it still whirs and makes the sound and looks like a chainsaw. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like every time around Halloween, I find myself just more and more annoyed because every year it seems like there's more and more costumes that are like not PC. Like now kids are talking about whether or not they should allow their son to go as Black Panther if he's not actually black, and whether you can go as like a little Indian woman or something like that. It's gotten to the point now where it's like people are getting so limited and people are getting ostracized for going as like Tonto or something like that. That like the whole point of Halloween, or like there was one teacher actually on a college campus who got vilified and fired. I don't know, it was a couple of years ago for suggesting that maybe for Halloween we should kind of let the kids go as what they want. And like pitchforks were out on all the universities, and this person had to get fired. It's like, I don't know. This is like hashtag world gone nuts to me.
Not that anybody on the show has ever been in trouble for dressing up as a black person.
No, I know, right? Well, Megyn Kelly got in real trouble this week for saying I didn't even watch it, but apparently she said some things about I don't know if you guys saw it, but that's another topic.
They covered it on the radio station, and they to be honest, like I'm not a Megyn Kelly or Fox News fan, whatever. Like I don't agree with it, but what she said wasn't that bad. I mean, she moderately like defended the use of blackface.
Okay, no politics. We got to stay away from the politics. Let's get back to some politics, guys.
That's politics? That's considered politics now?
No, we're going to get there. It was the going down the road. I just wanted to make sure we weren't getting there. That's all. I noticed on Twitter, Daniel, before we finish with Halloween, speaking of this, you had a funny one there. It was like your favorite costume or whatever. It was a millennial.
Yeah, apparently this costume's been around for a couple of years, but basically like somebody wears like bubble wrap, fragile stickers, and then it says like, I'm a millennial, and it's like the hat says I'm offended. I just thought it's so stupid. It's a silly costume, but it's kind of like, yeah. I'm glad we can mock and make fun of how far the pendulum has swung in some regions of the world, like whatever bubble that Justin Bonomo actually lives in, where he surrounds himself by like the only people that are offended by like stuff. It's like I don't know who his group is that like actually hear what he has to say and don't think he's absolutely certifiably insane.
All right. Shots fired. Love it. All right. Let's move on. T, you have some news about the upcoming MMA fight you're involved in.
Yeah, it's not major news. I'm fighting 2 weeks later than I was supposed to, and I'm now fighting in the bustling metropolis of Chilliwack, British Columbia, very close to where, your neck of the woods, Adam. But instead of the state capital of Canada, Calgary, I'll be fighting in Chilliwack. It'll be for a different organization, Unified MMA, which was the original promotion, canceled their whole card because I guess they had injury problems, and they had to cancel my fight as well. And so I'll be fighting for Rise FC in Chilliwack, British Columbia, November 30th. I have no idea whether they're going to do a pay-per-view thing. I don't even think they know yet, but that's when it'll be happening.
Hit him in the face!
Well, now MJ can go because that's our old co-host, Michael Johnson. But he, it would have been tough for us to get to Calgary. First of all, I love the fact that it's in Chilliwack, and we're telling a bunch of people that have no idea what Chilliwack is, that's actually the name of the town. And we are going to be...
well, remember Marco Valerio? We took Marco Valerio, of course, the Italian Las Vegas transplant, and he was just getting a kick out of every city name that we drive through. It's like Chilliwack, Kamloops. there's all like Western Canada and the United States. Because I think I'm guessing the First Nations and Native American culture there have had their names all over the footprints of all of these cities, settling places in British Columbia and Washington. And we do have some goofy names, but yes, Chilliwack, British Columbia population. Let me check, quick.
Wait, let me guess. I've got 37,000.
Oh, does anybody want the over or the under on 37,000?
Over.
Going twice, yeah. 83,788 residents in the bustling metropolis of Chilliwack.
Hey, that's more than Moncton, where they actually had a UFC last week.
That is true. Exactly. Yeah, Moncton, New Brunswick got a UFC last week. So, hey, Chilliwack might be next.
Where can people find tickets if they live in the greater Vancouver area, they feel like traveling to Chilliwack?
I believe, I don't know. Shoot me a message on Twitter because I don't have the links exact link handy on me right now. But Rise FC, RISE FC is the name. You can find them on Facebook, and I'm sure they have some website too. But if you actually are interested in coming, hit me up on Twitter, and I'll see what I can do.
Awesome. Let's wrap up Godfather Week on Poker Go, or Poker After Dark this week. Of course, we talked about it last week. We broke down the lineup. Daniel went over some of the people, or all of the people actually, that were going to play in the game or scheduled to start the game, and gave his thoughts on the games, how adept these fine fellows were at the different games. Daniel, I didn't catch any of it. Can you give us an update and get us how did you end up doing?
Yeah, so I was like on point as you could possibly be. But so one of the things we weren't sure about was originally we were like talking, what is the format? The typical format that they play over in Bobby's room includes a lot of like big bet games as well as limit games. What they ended up going with was a straight limit game, which is horse and triple draw. So we had Bryn Kenny on the list, and I mentioned, Bryn is going to like to play the big bet games and stuff. He only played for about like a couple orbits because he sort of thought it was going to be big bet, then realized probably it wasn't like a great game for him. So he didn't play very long. But in terms of like the picks that I had last week, or the ones that I said I would stake, my number one seed was Scott Seaver. And Scott Seaver ended up being the big winner. Not to say that like, a 2-day session is the be all end all of like proof and evidence, but I also had Gus Hansen at the bottom of the pack, and Gus Hansen held true to form and was at the bottom of the pack in that field. But it was a lot of fun, and I got to be honest with you, because I watched some of it, and I spoke to Terrence a little bit about some of the limit hold'em plays and different things, and I was like, for part of me, I tweeted it out as like, okay, seriously, are you guys, people used to ask me on high stakes poker, do you guys play for real money? Like, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, are you guys really playing for real money? Because it doesn't look all that much like you're trying that hard. It was like, it makes me like think like, why don't I show up there and go get free money every day if that's how they're going to play every day?
One of the things, I mean, you talk about the free money, but one of the things that Ali and Nick, the commentators, mentioned repeatedly was that the game was perhaps kind of smaller than the props that were being played. And I couldn't really tell what was being played for props, but I could tell that they did seem big just based on the chip colors that they were passing around. So when we're talking about who ended up big winner and big loser in the game, for me, it was kind of one of the frustrating things was that it was hard to track who was actually up and who was actually down in the actual poker side of things, as opposed to, whatever the hell they were hitting prop betting. And I mean, they were prop betting in triple draw rounds. I don't even know what you can prop bet because there's no community cards.
Oh, there's I'll explain some of the prop bets you can do in that
Please
game
do.
as well. But yeah, so that's the difficult thing. Like Maury, obviously, who runs the show, he kind of asks and, wishes that they wouldn't do props when we played on Poker After Dark and high stakes poker. Like he would always, because it's kind of like hard for people to follow. Like people don't know, like, oh, that's your stiff jack and my big boy, and I'm on for doubles. Well, nobody has any idea what that means if they've never played props before. I wrote a piece for Full Contact Poker years ago where I like literally go over all the possible props you can play, and I'll give you like sort of a minimal rundown. Props are as simple as like everyone has a suit, right? And you also have specific props, like Doyle might have, because Doyle's favorite hand was 10 deuce, so he has 10 deuce 3. That means if the flop cards or the first 3 cards in the stud round are 10 deuce 3 in any fashion. So if it's 10 deuce deuce, 10 3 3, or specifically 10 3 deuce, that's his prop. If it's in his suit, so let's say he has hearts, that's his big boy, that's his prop suited, which is worth 3 times more. Everyone has a big boy, so everyone picks like 3 card random combinations. They pick like 10 of them. So you'd have 10 3 deuce, you have 8 6 4, you have all these different ones. You have one that you designate as your big boy. So 10 3 deuce would be Doyle's big boy. If he hits his big boy on for triples in his suit, everyone will cry because that's very, very, very big. When you play the triple draw rounds, they have different types of props. You have in your hand, if you have a pair of queens, kings, or aces, that's a prop. If you have 50 points or more, that's a prop. So if you get like 5 face cards, right, that's 50 points, so you get a prop. If you get 51 points because an ace counts as high, then it's like another massive prop. Straights are props, flushes are props. Literally, these guys make up everything. They use what's called the stiff jack, okay? So this is interesting. Well, not really, but I'm going to explain it anyway. If your suit, you have a spade, right? So if you have spades and you have a jack of spades that comes out, but there's not another spade out, that means your jack is stiff, okay? When your jack is stiff, that's not good for you. You lose. Everyone else is on. When your jack has another suit in there, that's good, and it's called like an activator. What is an activator? An activator means you hit a prop, you're on for doubles the next round. and then you go on for triples. The reason people play this game, and I actually thoroughly enjoy it, is first of all, it distracts people from the poker, but also if you sleep, like if you don't see exactly every part of your prop and don't specifically say it, like you don't get paid on that prop. If you don't see that you're on for doubles and you just name your prop, you say, I see my big boy, I'm like, oh, he was on for doubles, he forgot. So it creates a lot of action, and sometimes, like Phil Ivey was actually a master at props in a lot of ways, because sometimes they played props so big that it made sense for him to play specific poker hands differently, so that a card, like a flop would come or wouldn't come or something based on his whole card. So, for example, if his suit was spades, right, and he has ace king of spades, he does not want to see a flop with his hand because it makes it less likely that he's going to hit, because those are big activators for him. So he might like make an oversized bet to see no flop, or like a big 3-bet or all in or something like that. So you can actually change the way the poker's played. It's obviously good for people that are not playing props, because everyone's like spewy and whatnot, and Doyle.
And they're the only ones
so
paying
funny.
attention, like paying full attention to the game.
But actually, I find that I play better when I play props because I'm looking at every board and engaged. But Doyle actually, because I'm in the WhatsApp group with them, and he's hilarious. Like, because Doyle says, he's like, well, I know I'm getting cheated in the props. I just haven't figured it out yet. He says, haven't figured it out yet.
So the interesting thing is when you start picking cards about which cards are yours. Doyle is 10 deuce 3, you were saying. Is there some sort of strategy to picking cards, given that if a bunch of people are dealt an ace or whatever, there's less likely a chance it's going to come, or there's going to be a flop, or
there's definitely strategy. Like I used to play where we each had 7 props, and my props were terrible because I had a 5 in 5 of my props. So that means I'm going to hit less boards. But when I do hit a 5, like there was a time where when I was playing props 4-handed, if I would hit on for triples like a 5-5-5 flop, that would be a $1 million score, like legitimately. I would win like $330,000 from each player because it was absurd how much I had. But it's actually I've had it happen, but I was only playing heads up against Barry Greenstein years ago, and a 5-5-5 flop hit. But it's a dumb strategy. You don't want to have like too many of the same cards. You also, depending on the type of game, right? A lot of games, ace is a very important card. So when there's a flop, people are more likely to have an ace or a deuce or a king or something like that. So you don't want a ton of props with an ace in it. You kind of want some raggedy props like, Jack 7-3 or something along those lines. And then, ones you're going to be able to remember, right? Like 5, 6, 7. That's my prop, and everyone has like sheets of paper, and it does look chaotic. I get it. The viewers at home, they're watching this and they're like, they don't understand any of it. So it affects the banter too, because people ultimately are going to be talking about props a lot. And if the audience doesn't know what's happening, and also, for like what Terrence said, you don't know who's really winning in this game. Like you see,
it also slows down a game a little bit too. So there would be a lot of times where they're playing 08 or something like that, and there's 4 ways to the flop, and then they're a little bit of flop, and then it's like somebody jumps up and celebrates, and then they got to pay him off, and then this and that.
Not only that,
okay, well it's on me.
But then you have arguments too. It's like, wait a minute, no, you weren't out for doubles. Yes, you were. Da, da, da. Wait a minute, that's my big boy, and I hit it the last hand, and you owe me this from this, and it's like sometimes it goes on, but it's actually like it's the norm. So I think it makes sense to bring the most authentic version of what happens in Bobby's room to people and like allow them to sort of be a fly on the wall.
Did it ever get bitter, like because somebody slept or whatever, or I was on for triples? No, you weren't. I mean, did everybody and people storming out? Like, does it ever get really bitter?
Well, there's sort of an unwritten rule, right? When someone sleeps and like we move on to the next hand, like nobody wakes them up even later. But that rule is broken sometimes when we want to needle the shit out of somebody. Right. So like if a guy was on for triples and didn't see that, his jack was out there or something, and it would have like kept him on a lot of money. So I was like, yeah. Remember that last flop? Yeah. The jack, huh? You just didn't want to call that one, huh? Phil Ivey was like notorious for like sick needles at that. But at the same time, Phil is a very focused guy. He didn't sleep very often. So he didn't really want to wake people up. But I don't know. I guess there's probably some sort of etiquette about props. But in that room, you'll find that needling is very common, and we're not going to talk about politics, of course, but like Doyle and Gordo, who get in there, they like, you see them on Twitter and stuff, they go back and forth and needle the shit out of each other, and it's all in good fun. And it's just kind of like, for lack of a better term, in 2018, because it's literally all boys, boys will be boys, and then Jennifer will be Jennifer.
I bet there's no shot clock needed when somebody's sleeping on a big prop, right?
Oh my God! You should see how fast people play, right? Let's say Doyle ordered Doyle ordered some food, and he's cutting up his burger, and his prop is laying out there, right? Everyone in the hand is like, "Fucking hurry up, bet, bet, check, bet." So because you have until like the board is gone, right? So like on the flop, if there's a turn card and a river card, you can still call your prop. The prop is considered dead when the cards are turned face down. So when that happens, you often see people like look at each other and go, hurry up. Let's speed this one up a little bit.
Speaking of variations to poker games, we had Friday Night Poker, and Kelly Minkin was on there, and there was a couple of hands came up because they were playing the 7 Deuce game. They're all playing in costume. It was Halloween. Give us sort of the rundown what happened with the 7 Deuce.
Okay, so first of all, this was a fun game. It was a Friday Night Poker. Amanda, she's here, by the way. Why don't you come here for a minute and help me explain this Friday Night Poker segment? She's here. She'll just jump in with us.
Wait, are you naked again? Are you naked again?
I'm not naked. I'm wearing clothes.
Okay.
So is she. So Amanda, it was dress up. So Amanda went as the best Harley Quinn I've ever seen. And for those of you who don't know who Harley Quinn is, she was from Suicide Squad.
Right.
Then, hi, Amanda. Say hello to everybody. Yeah. So you do this show. You've been doing the show for ever now. It's
what do you mean? It's like a month.
Well, a month.
Maybe
I don't know. It
weeks,
feels like
5
for you.
weeks.
It feels like you've been here forever.
Yeah.
So this is a fun show. Kelly, what was your favorite costume? Kelly had
Chun-Li.
Chun-Li,
Yeah,
and then
good.
Justin Young was dressed as an Amish person.
That was
He
good.
actually shaved his beard to look that way. He did a good job.
But it was he didn't have to do much because it's he sort of kind of looks Amish anyway.
Yeah.
And then Frank Casella was dressed it was so weird.
He was my favorite because he tried to be a unicorn, and he ended up looking like a troll.
He was wearing a pink scrubs and then a teal weird wig.
Yeah.
Looked so stupid.
He was so good.
So who do we got on the show? Before we go on to the Kelly Minkin hand, who do we got
Marley.
on the show this week?
Can you give me a second and I'll look?
Okay, you look and we'll get back to you. So the Kelly Minkin thing. Okay, let's talk about this hand because it's so stupid.
Okay.
For those of you that don't play the 7 Deuce game, essentially what it is if anyone with 7 Deuce, suited or not, wins a hand in any way, bluffing it or actually making the best hand, everyone at the table pays them, let's say $100, right? So Kelly had already won one, 3 hands before. She just won, with 7 Deuce and bluffed her way through it. Now, another hand comes up, 4 hands later. Justin Young raises. She 3-bets with the 7 Deuce, which pretty standard or whatever. I don't know if it was 4-bet or not, but the pot's already ballooned. So she has the 7 Deuce. I think it was 4-bet, but anyway, the flop is Ace King 5. She has the 7 Deuce, and Justin Young in position has Ace 6. So she checks, and Justin decides to check back the ace, which he does a lot. It's funny because we talked about a specific hand with him where I said he checks back top pair probably a little bit more than the average player. Well, now the turn is the 7. So Kelly decides to bet 3/4 pot. And Justin raises her. So she bets $7K. He makes it 17 or something. And she flat calls. She just calls with the 7 Deuce. And the river is a 7. So she makes 3 sevens. Check. Now Justin apparently goes all in because I think he's trying to get her off a chop. He thinks she just has some ace and she's going to get him off a chop. So he goes all in. She snap calls and wins again with the 7 Deuce. I was in the booth.
Oh, you were so excited.
We were drunk too. That's probably why.
I wasn't drunk. I was working.
You were not. You had a few sips of my vodka.
Okay.
Yeah.
That did it for me.
No. Yeah. But it's such a fun show. If you guys are looking for a show that's fun and that Amanda Leatherman's the commentator for, yay! Check out Friday Night Poker. It's a blast.
So Frank Casella's going to be on again this week. John Turner, that's
Pearl Jam, John Turner.
Chris Moorman.
Chris Moorman, not Moorman.
I don't know him.
Chris Moorman. He's
Moorman,
an online
okay.
guy.
Oh, he's married to Katie Lindsay.
That's right. Your favorite.
Okay. Dan Shack, and then Randall Emmett
Oh my God.
is coming, and then Marley is playing again.
Marley, though, did you guys see the Marley video? So
Okay,
Marley is a
she's
YouTuber.
awesome. I've been watching her vlog. She's hilarious.
Yeah, she did the one. This one was the funny one to me, where she walks in and she's looking for a boyfriend, a poker boyfriend.
Yeah.
She walks in the poker room. She's like, no, fucked him. Nope. Yep, fucked him too. Oh, the dealer. Yep, fucked him
I
also.
didn't know if we could say fuck. I wanted to
It's
do
my
that.
it's my podcast.
Oh,
Whatever.
it's yours.
Who's the sponsor?
Yeah,
Me.
she saw a girl and she's like, yeah, fucked her too.
Yeah, she's like, I fucked her too. It was awesome.
And then in the recent one, so I don't know if you guys have seen the recent one, she's talking about the Friday Night Poker game. And she's like, yeah, I flopped this flop king this. And she's like, and this is what I do for every date. If there's a chance for a backdoor, I'm never leaving. It's like, okay.
That's pretty funny.
She's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's really
A dirt ball.
Yeah.
A little bit. Of course you like it.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. She seems like your type anyway.
all right. So
All right. We'll let her go.
Okay.
We're going to let Amanda leave.
Facebook,
Thanks
right?
for dropping by, Miss Leatherman.
Yeah. Thanks for dropping by. It's Facebook, right?
It's on Stadium Poker, right? Stadium Poker. Or like you can watch it live on Facebook. And what's cool is you can interact with the commentators, which is Jeff Platt, Brett Hanks, and Amanda. And like, you can interact and it's fun. Like my assistant Patty was in there joking around. It was cool.
Perfect. All right, check that out. I quickly want to mention Run It Up Reno, because that came to an end. Matt Stout ends up winning the main event. Kevin Martin was the runner-up, the popular Twitch streamer. Jeff Gross won one of the events. Andrew Nemi, of course, is now a Run It Up ambassador. This series is really taking on a life of its own, of course, started by Jason Somerville. But it's really cool because it sort of changes the paradigm a little bit. It's now content creators bringing groups of people to casinos instead of the onus being on a casino to bring people in to play a tournament. Now it's content creators picking places to go have these events.
Well, yeah, this is all basically Jason Somerville's brainchild, and he's done such a great job. He brings guys like Boston Rob and Tyson Apostle from Survivor, and they create poker the way it's supposed to be. Like we just talked a little bit about Friday Night Poker, which I love because it's interactive and, sort of the wave of the future. And Run It Up Reno is exactly the same. The buy-ins are relatively small. They play goofy, crazy, fun games. And if you see like a lot of people there, it's a great time. Like people are doing karaoke, they're doing like Survivor watch parties because like you got the guys there and stuff like that. And it's exactly what poker's supposed to be, like a fun festival where all these personalities, these streamers, these people that are trying to create brands for themselves, fans of the game can rub shoulders with them and play with them, and not like huge exclusive buy-ins like 10,000 plus, but like $100 horse games and stuff like that. So this is really Jason taking things to the next level. And it's one of the like hashtag things that are like good for poker as far as I'm concerned.
It's funny. I know it's not quite time for the tweets yet, but I mean, this has just brought to mind the tweet because like I've never been to a Run It Up, but as Daniel said, Jake Harvard does just an amazing job of engaging real legitimate like poker fans, like guys who are just in it for the love of the game, don't care whether the buy-in's $50 or $5K or 50,000 or whatever, but mostly catering to the recreational crowd, but bringing in enough pros who are having fun doing it. And Danielle Anderson tweeted that she was at Run It Up Reno for 72 seconds or so before I had a tequila shot with some new and old peeps, and if you haven't been here, that's a mistake. And she just tweets out a photo of her doing shots with some people. Our good friend Chainsaw, Alan Kessler, his response to Danielle's tweet is, I was there for a Heartland Poker Tour event a few years ago. It's a nice property. I can't get excited for $86 events, though. And it's like, if there's anything more tone deaf than Alan Kessler kind of just shitting on, like being a rain cloud on a bunch of people who are having fun at a poker tournament, is there anything more Alan Kessler than just people like, hey, look at me, look at all these people having fun playing poker, and Alan's saying, I can't get excited about an $86 event though? Well,
for those of you that have seen the show Curb Your Enthusiasm, Alan Kessler is the Larry David of poker, like no question. If his hair was gray, he would literally be. I don't know, Larry David. Like in some episodes of Curve, like you're almost sympathetic to the plight that in the situation that he's found himself in. I don't know that I've ever been super sympathetic to like a situation where Chainsaw was just on Twitter. That's a fair point. Like he's the guy that goes to Run It Up to Reno with a shirt that says like let's make structures great again. Right. It's fucking $80 buy-in. People are trying to get it over with in a day, dude. You don't need the 12-24, 13-26, 14-28 level. The replies are even better. And then like a bunch of people say that the tournaments, hey, it's for a 30K platinum class, so that's why people are excited about it. And Alan goes like, oh, 1 out of 1,000 players wins, essentially saying like, oh, your EV of this thing is like so low, and I'd rather go grind video poker at 100.86% and try to get all the comps I can out of this casino.
Hi, nice to be on your show again.
All right, let's jump into the news.
What in the world is going on?
Fake, disgusting news.
The first thing to bring up is the Super High Roller Bowl has moved from just before the World Series of Poker. This is at the Aria, of course, the $300,000 buy-in with no rake. It is now moved to December, just before Christmas, December 17th to 19th this year. so in a couple of months. Again, 300K, 48-player cap. And Daniel, you finished second in this one last year for, I believe it was $3 million. Got your summer off to a great start. A great event because the ARIA, again, doesn't rake the event. It's become sort of a festival of poker, of high roller poker. Great for TV, Poker Go. The partnership there is fantastic. So they're going to have 18 seats guaranteed. ARIA VIP guests of the 48 players. So, whatever it is, a third of as non-professional poker players theoretically. And there's a lottery system for the other 30 seats. Do you want to talk about that lottery system quickly, Daniel?
Yeah. So it was actually this year. It seems like forever ago, but it was actually in May. And because they're changing the date from the typical May and moving it up to December, essentially we're going to have two in the same year. Overall, I think it's a good idea. It's in an more open space, and it's at the year end, which will work well with their sort of like player of the year standings. There's a lot of discussion every year about the lottery system, and some of the pros maybe like whining a little bit, not whining or whatever, just showing criticism about the way that it works. And just so people understand, the 18 reserved seats, they're reserved for VIP guests. That doesn't necessarily mean like whale, right? Essentially what they do is they do this lottery, which allows, and it's a rake-free event, right? Limited seating where they could essentially, if they chose to, handpick every single player. Like they could literally say, you know what, Christoph, you're nice. We don't like you because you're too slow. But no, Christoph has a chance to play, as does everyone else. Some people have a better chance to play, like myself, okay? I go into the lottery, right, of the 35. If my name is picked in the lottery, they still have 18 seats left to give to other VIPs. If I'm not chosen, and if I don't win a lottery seat, I'm going to be one of the other 18 seats. Phil Hellmuth is going to be one of the 18 seats. The ratings driving type players are going to lock up one of those seats. What ends up happening is if, say, Phil and myself and a lot of the people that would have gotten the seats anyway, if we win lottery seats, then it allows them to handpick the field a little bit more. So some people felt like, there wasn't a lot of transparency with this, and that, well, if they're going to just put Phil and myself in anyway, why put us in the lottery? And I can understand why they wouldn't necessarily like that. But this is a TV show where there's negative rake, actually. I don't know if there was negative rake there was negative rake in the year one before because Kevin Hart played, I guess. And that was part of like the thing. No, really, like he was just added to the prize pool, and that was where, whatever, negative rate came in. But yeah, I think the system's fine. I think it gives everyone a chance. Also, what they've done now is they've tailored it so that if you're in the, in the top 5 of the high roller of the year race, you're automatically going to get a seat. I think he should automatically give a seat to people that win like the Poker Masters thing or the US Poker Open and, things like that. But, the lottery is what it is. And there's several key reasons why the cap is important. One of which is recreational players don't want to play against a field of, all predominantly like professional players. And if you open the field up to, let's say, 70 or 80 players, now the quality of the field is much improved, but it also makes the chances of the recreationals doing well far less, right? The structure itself also, it's different than most high rollers we have because it's very, very deep. And this is why I do well in it, because I'm better at deep stack poker than 40 big blinds. This is my theory anyway. But that also makes it more difficult for recreational players. So there's like a steady balance in the ways in which you do this. But like, how can you complain like about a lottery system that everyone understands, and like you may get in, you may not get in. Like you're not entitled to it.
Well, is there a lot of complaining? Right. I mean, who have you heard that thinks that this is like the most unfair thing ever?
Well, there was talk like essentially what they do is every year they like front load all the people with like a whole bunch of Germans. They just put like every possible German into the lottery that they can to maximize their chances because they all pool their money, right? So they all like take pieces and stuff. So they don't really care which one they get in. They think they're all plus EV. And then the first year when I drew the balls, like almost every German got in. And then the next year that didn't really happen as much. So I think there were some complaints about the process, and they're like, well, Phil Hellmuth didn't win a seat. How does he in? Because he's Phil Hellmuth, okay? And he's more interesting than Christoph Vogelsang. And I like Christoph a lot. I really do enjoy him. But if you are making a TV show, you're not charging these people rake. They're not entitled to make the rules on how it works. And I don't have any real ethical problem with the way in which they do it. I think it's fair. And also, I'll tell you what, to Kerry's credit, he puts priority on people, let's say, for example, for this, the seats that he chooses, people that support the ARIA tournaments. So if you're a Justin Bonomo or a Jason Kuhn and you don't get in the lottery, you have a good chance of getting in on the 18 because you're a regular in the in the Aria high rollers. So I think the system works fine, and if people are complaining about it, I think that it's just entitlement issues, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I wonder, like you say, a bunch of Germans put their names in because they share the pools. Can you stop that in any way? Like everybody who wants to go in can put their name in, and they can just all share pieces, right?
Well, that's totally fine, right? So there's 48 spots, 35 lottery tickets. Everyone puts up 30,000 on the day in which that we have the lottery. And listen, if there's 200 people that do that, so be it. If you want to put like 60 names that are German, that's great. It increases your chances. There's no reason why that's a problem. We will make sure the event is high quality because, again, you're reserving 18 seats that you can always make sure that if Gus Hansen wants to play, he's in. If JRB wants to play, he's in. They're going to take priority over someone who may be a much better poker player, but doesn't add that extra value. Also, guys like Dan Shack or Kerry Katz and, the businessmen, like you need those types of players to make this the event that it is. So they're going to take priority over some, like a German that we've never heard of that, is part of a pool. So they have an equal opportunity in the lottery, but then in the, the reserve pickings, it's going to be based on, loyalty to the Aria high rollers, how often you play, and your ratings appeal for the TV show.
So the one interesting thing I'd look at, and let's take Phil Hellmuth, for example. I love watching Phil on TV for a bunch of reasons, but most of them aren't idiots from Northern Europe or you suck or can you believe that? It's all the other stuff that his sort of characters on display as far as, his insecurity about his ability, all that kind of stuff. But
I like it when he plays Raise Fold with an 8BB stack.
That's the fun. How about Limp Fold with the 7 from like the cutoff?
Yeah, crazy stuff. But I mean, so I'm wondering, does it encourage people who think that Phil's on there because he's telling people to go fuck themselves or they suck at poker? I mean, does that encourage people to go out and do that?
I don't think so. I mean, listen, Phil Hellmuth has been part of the game for 20 years. He's a unique personality, right? He clearly suffers from, some form of narcissistic personality disorder, but he does it. He's like, he really does, but he's got like a loving heart. He's like an actually good man. He just is he just lacks self-awareness. He's extremely competitive. And at the poker table, he often acts like an asshole. And away from the table, when confronted with it, he'll own it and he'll apologize. And he'll apologize in a real big way. We saw at the World Series of Poker this year where he was completely out of line, talking about folding in the middle of a hand in a three-way pot and, affecting the action. And, he did the right thing. He apologized when he understood it. And he paid the guy $10,000 for his entry next year. So he is self-aware enough. Like he cares enough. Like I really do think he's got one of the purest, most beautiful hearts of any human being that I know. He's just a little bit crazy, We're all a little bit crazy. He's just a little bit more. I really don't think you can, I don't think his behavior is mimicable anyway. Like William Kassouf has his own shtick, but there is never going to be another Phil Hellmuth. He's just a unique individual. And I don't know that he does any sort of there's anything negative about having him on TV, like in terms of making people act like that. Like, I don't even know necessarily if people acting like that is bad for the game because it's just drama and it's good for TV. That's for sure.
Yeah. For me, the issue has never been I don't care whether if Phil Hellmuth behaving in the way he does gets him on TV more often. It doesn't bother me in that sense. What bothers me, and we're diverting a bit is the consistent, the inconsistent standards that are applied to him by virtually every tournament director in existence. Daniel talked about the World Series hand where he was completely out of line this year. And he I don't even know, did he get a warning? Anybody else could have gotten a 2-orbit penalty, some sort of severe penalty, but Phil manages to use his celebrity status to consistently get away with stuff. At the beginning of the World Series every year, they're like, our penalties are on a tracking system. If you get a penalty, it's going to go on your record and it's going to be tracked for years and years and years. And it's like, what's the difference, the delta between what Phil's record looks like, his rap sheet or whatever looks like, and what it should look like is just astronomical. That's what consistently.
You know what that's called, Terrence?
That's called chewing your leg out to get out of the trap, kid.
The thing about Phil that's difficult though is to some degree you want to let Phil be Phil, right? Because Phil's a character and he's good for ratings. But the question is where exactly do you draw the line? And the line is murky. Again, Terrence makes a good point. If it's just some guy that nobody knows and he starts acting like a jerk, it's a lot easier for, I think, tournament directors to see that and go, that's bad behavior. But because Phil is so uniquely always in that behavior, much like our current president, we're not going politics, but like once that behavior is so normalized and comfortable, you kind of just go, okay, like, is that too far for Phil? Because that's kind of how Phil always is. And I think we have a pretty good idea. Like when he said to Terrence, what did he call you, Terrence?
It was I don't remember what the modifier for motherfucker was now. It was a something motherfucker, like dumb.
Moron.
It wasn't dumb.
I think it was motherfucker.
Moronic motherfucker. Thank you.
Moronic motherfucker. And you know what? To be fair, in that hand, that was an accurate description. I felt like maybe not the motherfucker part, but like the moron. I watched how you played the hand.
But Daniel, I'm just some casual player, businessman who wants to throw around his money. You can't be encouraging stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. You are now reformed professional, and now just a guy who beats heads.
Exactly.
I love Phil for all the reasons we were talking about. I dislike some of the personal stuff that he does, but I love that. And again, his character flaws. And to Daniel's point about there's never going to be another Phil, you're 100% right, because his character flaws are on display all the time, and it's so fun to watch. It's like when you go watch a movie and you're watching a character study, and it's not just this character who's perfect. This character has all these flaws, like Walt in Breaking Bad or some character study type series or movie. He is exactly who he is, and it's so fascinating to watch. That's why he makes great TV. All right, let's move on to the World Series of Poker Europe has wrapped up. Martin Cabral has won the 100K Super High Roller Boy.
Speaking of good behavior, we're on to Martin Cabral.
That's not going in a second. He won the 100K Super High Roller. He beat out 94 others to take down his second bracelet. He won one in Vegas. No, he won one in Rozvadov last year, a smaller event. He won $3 million for this win. And he actually jumped in. They had another 100K that they ran quickly after, and he ended up getting second. I think there was 30 or 35 people ended up winning another million, getting second right away. So he had a pretty good weekend. But he's not everybody's favorite person.
Yeah, this is gonna be like shots fired, hot take here for me. But Terrence was actually there when I remember like during the moron thing, like Martin was at the other table, which was sort of what was getting Phil all riled up. And I said flat out to this guy, like, if I ran a tournament series, which is always possible, I'm an elder statesman in poker, I may do that in the future, I would seriously consider actually banning Martin Cabral from my events and not letting him play. Not because he's cheating, but because he is disruptive to the playing experience for the players in several ways. One, his tanking. Two, his poor behavior and incessant whining and complaining and just being a disruptive force. Like every time Cabral, Martin's at a table, there's problems. People can say, listen, hey, you got to let people play how they want, and that's his shtick or whatever. I'm like, you don't actually, you really don't. These events don't have to open themselves up to that. Like I would be fine with a rule that says, if somebody is disruptive to the playing experience of the players, you can eliminate him from the tournament. So what I would do with him is I would let him play my series first, and I said, listen, you are on the shortest possible leash ever. If you were under the gun and you take 30 seconds to make any fucking decision, you're out. I'm going to take your chips and I'm going to throw you out of the tournament. If you say anything past 4 words to a tournament director, you're out. I don't care how many chips. You could be the big stack with 6 people left. I'm going to take you out of the tournament. I'm not even going to pay you 6th place. You're out. Good luck suing me because I'm going to make you sign all this shit first. He is the number one worst experience kind of player to play with in all of poker today. And, nice for him to win, but we just can't let behavior like that destroy the game. He's so different than Helmuth, in terms of what we talk about.
The tournament that Daniel's talking about, the Limit Hold'em tournament, where he was like, I think we were in day 2, and it's at the Rio, it's a World Series event, and it's the actions on him pre-flop and Limit Hold'em, and he is complaining about the air conditioning and demanding that the floor staff bring him a blanket. He literally held up the action for like 2 to 4 minutes, waiting for the floor staff, being like, are you going to do something about this air conditioning? We can't play under these circumstances. This is ridiculous. Like we paid this $10,000 to enter this tournament. Like, go. You should bring me a jacket. You should bring me a blanket. Like and just 8 other guys at the table are just like, their heads are buried in their chips, just going, fucking do something before I cut your head off. And I was just like, I hope Martin is actually connected to some sort of like Czech mob, because like if he's not, someday somebody's just gonna beat the living crap out of him.
How do you guys really feel? I wonder if it's some way to piss everybody off at the table. And
well, yeah, no, there's definitely that, right? So I understand a couple of things he does. You know those Aria high rollers? We do have a 30-second shot clock. He believes that he has an advantage in very short stack play. So he literally takes the full 30 seconds in every situation, right? Which is just tilting and annoying. Like, again, under the gun +1, he could have 9-deuce offsuit, and he just burns the whole 30-second because he wants the structure to be bad because he thinks that gives him an edge, right?
He did the same thing in Limit Hold'em. And then he tried to say, like, oh, you know, like in very obvious situations where it's just like, you know, play your hand or don't play your hand. He's like, oh, you guys are all pros at this game, but I'm not very good at this game, so I need a long time to think about this. And then, you know, yeah, he literally just has 7-3 under the gun. And he is, again, just trying, like Daniel said, just trying to get as few hands as possible while the blinds are deep, or, and you know, but
yeah, like, so he's the kind of guy that rules are created for. Like the hand for hand rule was created by Oklahoma Johnny Hale, who for some reason has been tweeting at me nonstop some random conspiracy theories. It's like so weird. I'm like, what?
He's lost his mind,
bro.
Oklahoma Johnny, unfortunately, has lost his mind. Yeah,
he's 91, but I'm like, the tweets he sends, I'm like, dude, I don't know how to help you right here. But anyway, there was no such thing as hand for hand back then. But Oklahoma Johnny was the first to stall on the money bubble, and people were like, "What the hell are you doing?" It was considered like essentially cheating. Before online poker, you did that, you like got a lot of dirty looks, right? But I think online poker taught people that like you get a time bank, that's for you to use in any which way you want. So like for him, a rule was created. With Martin Cabral, like we have shot clocks to speed up the game, right? Now we have to consider like, well, should we in place a rule for a guy who's taking the full 30 seconds every time, and like enforce penalties or something along those lines? Like, it's frustrating and annoying that when we make progress to try to better the game, there are going to be some dickhead assholes who try to ruin it for everyone. It's that, what is that, prisoner's dilemma? If everybody did exactly what you're doing, right, and it destroyed something, don't fucking do it.
Tragedy of the commons, right? It just came to me randomly. Remember the name we were trying to think of last week, Danny? It was Brent Carter.
Yes, Brent Carter.
That came to me completely randomly. Okay, so wrapping up the World Series of Poker, our buddy Shaun Deeb takes down WSOP Player of the Year, something he really wanted to win. He went over to Rozvadov, admitted that it probably wasn't a good idea. He went over there because it was important to him. And Shaun has always been interested in leaderboards. He won the PokerStars leaderboard for several seasons in the World Championship Online Poker early on, and it's important to him. And it's cool that a guy will come out and admit that something like that, where it has no cash value, I don't think it ever has, but we can ask Daniel about that in a sec. But I mean, it's important to him to be recognized as the World Series of Poker Player of the Year. I thought that was pretty neat. Daniel, thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Well, Shaun Deeb is always the kind of guy that's going to be like a favorite for any sort of Player of the Year race because he's a grinder. He puts in a lot of time, and he's also very good at all the games. So not a surprise. And you look at his stats, which I know you have listed. The stats look different than they used to in the past with when you add the World Series Europe and all these smaller events, but like 20 cashes, you know, a couple bracelets. Yeah, pretty impressive run. But as far as like World Series of Poker Europe, I think that it's, you know, what do you call it? Would you jump the shark a little bit? Yeah. You know, it's people are not like, they're not getting a lot of the big names to go. A lot of people that were in the race for Player of the Year did not go. So it kind of was like win by default in a sense near the end there. But I don't know how much more legs that thing has to, you know, continue to like stretch out the Player of the Year race.
Well, and it's interesting because there's a simple solution that I see, and obviously I'm missing something, but London for the World Series of Poker Europe, it seems to me would be the place to have it. Nobody, or it seems like, no, I shouldn't say nobody because lots of people go to Rozvadov, but it seems like people are staying away from it because they have to go that far to that casino for the World Series of Poker Europe. So yes, I guess the sponsorship is important, and the partnership the World Series has with the King's Casino must be, you know, a pretty good one. But if they're interested in building the event, it seems like London would be the no-brainer. I
love the idea of London. You know, the issue they've had in the past with London is just like location. It's very difficult. Like London is a cramped space, right? Yeah. They've had it like in Leicester Square there, not a lot of tables. So if you end up having like big numbers for an event, it's very difficult. Like they had to actually hold them in multiple casinos, like one tournament in multiple casinos. PokerStars, when they were in London, was able to find a reasonable facility, but that is not easy to do. It's expensive, first and foremost. to hold an event in London. People rent small apartments in London where for what you could get like in Vegas, something that's like 5 times the size, right? So as much as I love the idea of London, I think just those issues cause a logistical problem. But the whole concept behind World Series of Europe, I think after a while, was the idea that it was going to move around. And right now, Rosvadov is an easy place because Leon is very poker friendly. He loves the game and he wants it there. It's a good facility for poker. They have the tables, but there is not exactly a lot of ancillary things to do there. It's not like exactly like a vacation spot where you're going to go see a show or something. It's just you're there to play poker and that's it.
All right, 2018 World Series of Poker Player of the Year. Congrats, Shaun Deeb. By the way, Daniel, Shaun doesn't think you're a fan.
Oh, so Shaun and we have a weird history and a weird life. Like, we needled each other for a long time. Like, I mean, listen, flat out, I'm just going to say, like, I like the guy, but there's no question that of the young guys, he is the most adept at angle shooting. He's done it several times, and he's willing to do it. Like, this is a guy that in a Raz situation, he could have, like, ace-4. His opponent has, like, a 3 and catches a queen, and he reaches for his chips. The opponent, like, puts out the call because he's going to call, and Shaun says that's a bet and then check raises him. Like, he'll do that. And he's done that, and he doesn't have a problem with it. I'm like, in my book and everyone else's book that hears that, they call that angle shooting. So we live by a different standard in terms of, like, what we think is fair and equitable as far as angle shooting goes. Like, he's not breaking the rules. He's taking advantage of the rules, but that's what an angle shoot is by definition. Angle shoots are legal actions you can take that are kind of shady and cheesy.
All right, so that's 2018. 2017 World Series Poker Player of the Year. Who remembers who won last year?
Was that
Jesus?
John Hennigan?
Oh, no, Chris Ferguson. Roscoe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with his 8 million min cashes. If Ross nailed it, yeah.
Passes for 400 grand, yes. All right, 2016. Does anybody remember who won the World Series of Poker in 2016? Player of the Year.
Oh,
Gordo? I'm going to go with Gorodinsky.
Jason Mercier.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
2015, Gordo.
Okay, I was going to get to Gordo eventually, right?
Yeah. 2014? German.
George Danzer.
George Danzer. 2013?
Yours truly.
And
for the second time.
You remember those years.
Yeah.
Merson. And you won the very first one, 2000. Didn't you win a truck or something?
I did. Back then, they gave me a Toyota Tundra, which my brother still has it in his driveway. Rarely drives it. Yeah, he still got it. No joke.
Oh, that 14 years later?
Yeah, it's actually he has another truck, but this is like his good truck. the Tundra is his good truck that he doesn't use for work.
That's the dinner truck.
Okay. Here's what's funny. 2004, you won the World Series Poker Player of the Year. You won 1 bracelet. You final tabled 5 events for 6 cashes for $340,000 prize money.
Yeah, well, back then there wasn't 4 events a day.
Right.
There was 1 event a day. It was like stud 8 or better is Monday. 1,500 no limit is Tuesday, and it was like 1 event a day. So it was like that's over maybe 30 events total. Where I had 6 cashes over that is a lot more difficult. And also, as most of them were final tables because they didn't necessarily always pay 800 spots.
For sure. All right, moving on.
In my day, when I busted a World Series poker event, I stayed busted.
You went and got a drink.
And just jump right back in the lineup.
Adam, I have a suggestion for World Series of Poker Europe. There is a place. There's a place in Europe. It's Western. It's easy to get to. It's lush. It's green. It has tons of space. It's Kells, Ireland.
Ah. Awesome.
That could work.
Moving on. This week, the e-gaming review had their awards. PartyPoker ended up winning for Poker Operator of the Year for the 2nd year in a row. Thought it was interesting that, and I don't know how political the EGR is. I don't really have any experience with it. I know they are focused on affiliate kind of stuff too as well, and they talk about stuff that kind of stuff in their awards. But PartyPoker, they honored them for the 2nd year in a row to win the Poker Operator of the Year. We did call them out, and they did respond, and it wasn't just us, other people too, with their dealing with their player funds and segregating them. So I thought it was equally, important to point out when they do get recognized as a poker operator, because again, it's really healthy to have PartyPoker and PokerStars both healthy, both doing good things for poker. Let's move on. There's an interesting thing that PokerStars did this year, talking about PartyPoker and PokerStars. They have done recently, and that's with Daniel. And it's called the Human Lie Detector. I don't know who've seen it. I didn't know about it until today when I started watching some of the videos. And it reminded me of this old show that used to be on TV in the 80s, and I'm dating myself, but F. Lee Bailey, who was one of OJ's defense lawyers, used to have a show on TV called Lie Detector, and he'd bring people on, like notable people, and he'd run them through the lie detector. And of course, it's the sample is obviously skewed by people who are willing to go on TV and be hooked up to a lie detector. So it seems like they're less likely to be lying. But it was interesting because I got that kind of feel from watching the videos, Daniel. It looks like it's been some fun to do.
Yeah, so I just want to commend you because, you hit the nail on the head in terms of the inspiration. We were going for 80s cheesy cop show, as you can see with a lot of things, and it's been running over the last 4 weeks or so. And it's another creative way to give people a platinum pass. And essentially how it works is, I sit down with a pro, I ask them 3 specific questions, that could be all off the wall. I ask Maria, for example, who's your celebrity crush? And of the 3 things, they have to lie about one of them. And the viewers, everyone at home, you can play along. And this is kind of like an extension of the truth or bluff thing we did with Kevin Hart and Usain Bolt last year during the campaign with that. And essentially everyone gets to play at home, and you send in, your guess. Was it 1, 2, or 3 with your Stars ID, and you're entered into a free roll. If you got it right, you get yourself a tournament ticket, which could win you a platinum pass. So we've been running them over the last little while, and the last one we did was with Jeff Gross. And I was curious to see how you guys would do with this one here.
I'll play the first question here.
You ready for the first one?
Yeah.
Who was your childhood hero and why?
My childhood hero growing up was Michael Jordan. He was the guy I looked up to the most when I was a kid.
So you're a big NBA fan, huh?
Now, not as much then, yes.
I always thought it was soccer.
So these are really fun because remember, Daniel, you're asking a poker player who is trained in reverse tells and stuff like that. So you've got to kind of wade through their initial honest reaction. And I love this kind of stuff because, all of us poker players, we watch man, my wife loves these 2020 and all these cop, who did it things. And they obviously, they'll have interviews with people. They'll show the police. By the way, I don't know how they ever get access to the police interviews of these people. Why is this stuff being let out? But
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's funny because you always look at these people and, he's lying. I think he's lying. And we pride ourselves in sort of knowing when somebody's lying and when it's not. And I'm sure we, think that we're better at it than we are. But that's sort of the trick for you, right? To try and figure out and wade through these guys. Yeah,
well, it's not just me. So what I want to do here is I want to why don't you go ahead and play the second and the third one. So we have an example of all 3 for the listeners. And I want to hear your analysis on what you picked and why. So roll up the next 2.
Okay.
Let's move on to number 2. What is your biggest phobia or fear?
I think heights would be my biggest fear. I don't love flying. I wouldn't ever skydive. Being up high, I don't like it. It makes me a little uncomfortable, and being out of control.
You're not a trapeze guy. Got it. All right, last one. Ready? What is the most romantic thing you've done or had someone do for you?
Proposing to my now wife, and I knew I was going to marry her, but I had to ask her parents, and I didn't want her to know that I was asking them, and I had her sister help me a little bit.
Jeff Gross proving that chivalry is not in fact dead. All right, Jeff, and you're going to have to tell me one of those cards is a 1, 2, or 3. Whatever the bluff was, you go ahead and put that forward.
Okay, I got mine. Terrence, you ready with yours? Here's mine.
Okay. I have a question before we go. Did Jeff know the questions before they were asked, or is he responding instantly? Is this the first time he's ever heard the question?
Yeah. So the way that it worked was I had a whole bunch of questions I could ask. They had no idea what question I was going to ask. They were all off the cuff.
Okay. Go ahead, Adam. You were going to say
his childhood hero when he says Michael Jordan pretty much right away, and then he says because you say big basketball fan, and he goes, well, not really anymore. And I think that I almost feel like that was a bit of him trying to reverse tell you a little bit, instead, because I don't think he would say that if it was the other way around. So I'm going to believe Michael Jordan is his hero. The second,
Adam going third level there, going he's trying to make himself look nervous. That's what you're saying essentially? He's trying to make himself look nervous.
Or throw a reverse tell. I could be wrong. That's the feeling. That's my initial gut feeling on that. The one about his phobia, I think, is the lie, because what he says when he starts describing it, he is, I don't like heights. I would never jump out of a plane. I don't think there's not a ton of people, and especially somebody who's like this outgoing poker player type person
who travels a lot.
They would never do something.
I agree with that.
I could see him saying, I don't think I'd ever jump out of a plane. I would never jump out of a plane or parachute, I think is what he said. And what was the third one again? Quickly remind me.
The romantic wife proposal.
Yeah, that seems pretty standard. So my guess, is the second one he was bluffing.
I had pretty similar analysis. Well, first of all, the one that I was absolutely confident was like you would have to think that just the negative implied odds of saying that the proposal to his wife wasn't the most romantic thing he's ever done is so astronomical that if he's willing to, like, just for whatever, I mean, he's a G if that actually is the lie. But I don't think
that's brilliant analysis, Terrence, because I never thought of that, but like that's so true. Like
yeah. He knows he's going to go out on social media. He has to hit the retweet button.
She was in the room.
Okay, even more so then. Okay, so I think we can toss that one and punt it down the field. Yeah, it's funny. Adam, I think Adam might be onto something with that whole Michael Jordan versus Tell thing. To me, it wasn't what Adam's analysis, but although it does play into this as well about he seems like an outgoing guy. He's traveled the world, like Ross said, so it's probably not the flying thing. For me, it just sounded like he was just stuttering a little bit, like he wasn't quite sure exactly what to say, as if he was making it up as he was going along. And that's why I asked that question about did he know the answer in advance? If he had a time to prepare, because if you have a little bit of time to prepare. You can always just say, "Oh yeah, like it's spiders. I hate spiders. They're creepy. They're crawly. They're coming all over me." But when you're forced to make it up on the spot, it's a little less organic. And so I'm going the same with that. I'm saying number 2 is the lie.
All right, Ross. Let's give you last option. Are you on number 2 as well?
Yeah, it has to be number 2. It's the only one that makes sense.
All right. Okay, so we haven't revealed this yet because what we do is, on PokerStars, it's a an everyday thing, and people still have an opportunity. I don't know if this podcast is going to drop in time, but if it does. You go to my Twitter feed or PokerStars Twitter feed, and you still have an opportunity to put in your guess. These guys suggest number 2. I won't tell you if they're right, but maybe now next week's show, we will reveal exactly what it was. And you'll find out anyway in the next couple days.
And so you have to use the hashtag human lie detector, and that puts you in a draw for a satellite ticket for a Platinum Plus.
Right. If you guess it right, then you absolutely get yourself a ticket.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes, you get yourself a free roll into that tournament, and then you have a chance, if you win the free roll, to win a Platinum Pass.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. We got a couple tweets. Let's do those.
You're going surfing on the internet.
Our buddy Andrew Brokos at Thinking Poker. By the way, if you're interested in a very strategy-centric podcast from poker, Thinking Poker is fantastic. Andrew Brokos, one of the hosts. He retweeted one of his somebody he follows, and this is the tweet. It goes like this: 1 p.m. Monday at the Commerce Casino. There's a doctor at my table. He's on the phone with one of his patients at the hospital. He's asking about her symptoms and giving her medical advice while he's checking his cards and pushing chips in the pot. It continues. He thinks she should leave the hospital because her gallbladder seems pretty good, and he raises.
The most commerce things that could happen. I think the only thing that could be like a little bit more commerce is like a lawyer giving legal advice while at the table to like his guy who's trying to get out of jail right now. But that's very commerce gonna commerce.
And then he spits on the dealer.
Yeah.
Hopefully not the same guy.
All right, let's do some mail.
All right.
That right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay?
Mailbag. Email number 1.
Shaun writes, hello, I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I was wondering about poker chips and books. I was wondering if you guys could talk about the different poker chips that y'all like and explain that's me doing my best Southern y'all, by the way. And explain the different...
Right up there with your DAT.
different types of chips that are out in the market. Also, when buying a set, what kind of chip should I be going for? Does the weight and material of the chip matter? And if I buy a set of 1,000 chips, how should I divide and choose which denominations to get? Like if the denominations are 1, 5, 10, 25, 50, 100, 500, 1,000, etc. Which books would you recommend to help us grow in poker strategy and theory? Thank you guys for the show. Keep up the good work, and look forward to more episodes. So chips is interesting, right? Like everybody likes different chips, and if you're hosting games, you got to remember it's just not about you. It's about what kind of chips people that you're going to be bringing to the game they're going to like. Obviously, the heavier chips are better. It's the quality's better, and they just feel more fun to riffle, etc. So if we're talking about chips, my vote is for heavier chips. What do you guys think?
Yeah, heavier clay chips is what you want to get. You don't want to get those flimsy little ones you can get like at Walmart or whatnot. And as far as like the second part of your question in terms of denominations, I would recommend strongly to not put any numbers on them at all and just get different colors. So that way you can always adjust, right? Like depending what stakes you play, you might want to play cash games with some. You might want to play tournaments where you might need like, a 100K chip, or it allows you more versatility when you have, and I would say as a general rule, if you have 4 different colors, you're doing fine. Like if you have a green, which is typically a quarter chip, a black for 100 chip, a red, you could make a $5 or a $500 chip, and then maybe a purple or a yellow, which you can use as thousands, 5,000s, or whatever, along those lines. And that would be in line with what you'll see in most casinos across the world.
Yeah, what Daniel said, and also no speed chips. Just say no to speed chips. Never. Speed chips is never the answer. It's like, so yeah, I would say weight probably over 11.5 grams, I think is what most casinos use, clay, but never speed chips, because speed chips are miserable. You can't stack them in 20s. Like they just like slide. You go to bet like 4 of them and you end up like tossing out 9. It's terrible. Don't go speed chips. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Martin Cabral and speed chips, 2 things we don't like. Okay.
Don't you? You guys have both played in LA. Aren't speed chips the worst?
I don't even know what they are.
Oh, you know what they are. They're like
the slippery, shitty ones that
Yes.
Oh, those are stupid.
Yeah,
they're stupid.
Well, the
stupid ass chips.
They fly across the table.
How about fuck those chips and fuck Martin Cabral?
Yeah.
Oh. That's what we're gonna name this podcast.
So that's what I should title it today.
Yeah, right.
Well, I won't sound like the worst guy in the world when I introduce the podcast every day. At least that'd be better. As far as what books to recommend for poker strategy and theory, Our Old Stomping Grounds at 2+2 is a fantastic place to start with that. They're poker theory and strategy publishers. They've got a very wide array and backlog. I mean, some of the stuff, obviously is dated. The game changes, but they also keep releasing new books with new type strategy stuff. I mean, in the basics, getting the fundamentals. There's some excellent stuff there as well. So anybody else?
Well, poker's a big topic, right? So there's a few ways to think about how to learn at poker, and it's sort of interesting. Like, do you want to learn about poker as the game in general, right? Like do you want to think about like mathematics and odds and game theory? That takes you down a different path of I want to learn to play no limit hold'em. Or I even want to play no limit hold'em tournaments, or I want to learn to play pot limit Omaha Cash. Like there are different books for different games, but there's sort of overarching theory that covers everything. So in that vein, you have the theory of pokers, and you have mathematics of poker, and so many, and even just general gambling related things, right? Like so, like just and those things teach you about poker and gambling. Like for example, my cousin who doesn't gamble at all asked me just completely out of the blue yesterday while I'm sitting in like the doctor's office, like waiting for my appointment, like, hey, how come are the odds better when you're playing single deck blackjack, where they reshuffle after every hand? Shouldn't it be the same as multiple deck blackjack where they reshuffle after every hand? Are the odds the same? And I said, no, it's still better to play the single deck game. And he goes, how? And I explained it to him, but it's one of those things, and he's like, oh, wow, that's wild. Like I never would have thought about that. And I'm like, don't worry about it. I've had 20 years of practice figuring out like 0.2% edge differences. Like this is what I do, because I've been like, this is just how my brain is wired these days. And it's not something that even affects me. I haven't played blackjack in like 10 years, but just to say that, like, what books would you recommend for poker theory is a very hard question to answer, because it really depends on what kind of learner you are and how you want to go about learning the game.
Yeah, I'm going to take another hot take here and say that like books are archaic in terms of ways in which you can learn how to play poker in 2018. There are so many free available ways to do that. One in which is Twitch. find a Twitch streamer that you like, that speaks to you in such a way that you understand, whether it's Somerville or Lex Valdez or Jamie Staples or Kevin Marr. There's a whole wide selection of guys that you can learn from without risking any of your own money. And you learn in real life situations, which will actually expedite your learning curve. Now, you want to talk about overarching like game theory type stuff, maybe books are a little more feasible there, but then you also have YouTube. My YouTube channel, I was doing tons of videos that are free on how to learn how to play poker. There's also, the masterclass that I did, which is $90, and it's about, I don't know how many hours total. Probably.
I'm getting ads for the masterclass on Facebook now because Facebook is creepy and it knows.
They know. Oh, they know everything. They know where you are right now. Yeah. But yeah, masterclass is another way with through video and through learning from other people. It's just so much more interactive with forums and all these different things than just a book. Like a book is, when you read a book, you have to read a book also with a grain of salt because you're reading one person's take and they could be completely wrong. I remember years ago, tournament strategy book written by Sklansky, Gus Hansen flat out when he wrote his book he literally said, do the exact opposite of everything they recommend in this tournament book. And he meant it. Like he had such a different take. So whenever you're reading a book on poker theory, I remember reading TJ and Tom McAvoy's Limit Hold'em book. And they had in there, no joke, someone raises your big blind, defend with ace-9. If the flop comes 9-4 deuce, lead at it. If they raise, you fold because they have an overpair. Like, what the fuck, right? Like, just really bad information. So you have to take into account who is the author, have they done this, are they successful, and don't just assume that one person has the answers because it's their perception of a situation. So use your own mind to break this down. Gus Hansen was on a podcast today just talking about that, where he's read Doyle's book and he reads a lot of it, but he questions everything you read. So anything you read, question if it makes sense to you, and look for a second opinion, if you will.
I think TJ wrote poker books almost entirely so that he could bluff, run over people at the table, because his no limit books were like that too. It's like, oh yeah, if somebody puts in the third bet, it's always aces. You should just fold your kings. There's so much of that stuff. But I agree. Twitch is fantastic because how often are you actually going to get hands in situations where a high level poker player is going to talk you through exactly why they played the hand the way they did? And sometimes they're going to be distracted and sometimes they're going to make mistakes. So even with something like Twitch, you get a really good player, really good players misread hands, misplay hands in the heat of the moment. They go back and think it later. And that's why training videos are still a thing. You do in most cases have to pay for training videos, but the training video, they've kind of gone back and they've thought about, here's a bunch of hands that I played at the final table of the W Coop, whatever event. And oh geez, here I misplayed this one and I'll tell you why, this is way better. And my line here is terrible. But yeah, Twitch is most of the time, because these are professional poker players, they're going to make the right decision 95% of the time, listening to their thought processes. And depending on what level Shaun's at, you may be at a point where this Twitch streamer, okay, this guy's way too advanced. He's talking about concepts I don't really get. And then you go back and with another one and be like, oh, this guy's explaining things that are way too obvious to me. And you like Daniel said, kind of find your person, that your spirit animal when it comes to your poker mentoring.
Email number 2.
Dean writes, hey guys, love the podcast. Look forward to it every week. We get bugger all poker news in Australia. Bugger all, what a great expression. So your podcast is a way to keep up. Can you give us an update if you have any news of what is happening of online poker becoming legal in Australia? Does Daniel, as a rep of PokerStars, know what's going on? We are getting no updates here and desperately miss our online games. Keep up the woodwork. Oh, I feel for all of our friends down under. I always love when there was a much less Australian presence at the World Series this year, and I have to think it was because of the online poker ban. It really makes me sad because Australian people come in and making their funny jokes is one of the things I miss.
All right, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I would say optimism is warranted here, okay? But it's going to require an effort from you guys in Australia to make sure that you're reaching out to the local congressman or whatever and letting people know that you want poker, because I do think that there is certainly a push to see some positive things happen in Australia sooner than you might think. So, so I think, I don't know, again, you can't take anything I say as gospel, but if I were a betting man, I would bet on online poker returning to Australia by 2020.
Wow, that's fantastic news. Hopefully that happens.
By 2020, before January 1st, 2020 is your.
No, let's go December 31st at 11:55 p.m.
Okay, so you're taking the under. You're taking the under on the very end of 2020.
Sometime in 2020. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, this is a good time to mention that this podcast is presented by Daniel Negrenu's Masterclass of Poker. Daniel, each week we've been talking about one of your chapters. This week I wanted to ask you just a couple of words on c-betting, because I think back to, obviously the early days of No Limit Hold'em, when it was, widely adopted as the game that gets played. C-betting, everybody c-bet 100%. It was like you raised before the flop, you c-bet the flop. It didn't matter what the texture was. There was no sort of thinking about.
We call that the Barry Greenstein. Ace, king of spades. Ace, king of spades, 5 callers. The flop is 7, 8, 9 of hearts. Well, c-bet. Good luck. That's burning money.
So yeah, talk a little bit about c-betting and what use that is for a player's arsenal.
All right. So what we talk a lot about is a theme throughout the masterclass is a mixed strategy. And c-betting is certainly a place where you definitely have to think about at a deeper level how you are balancing your checking and betting ranges in terms of c-betting, right? If you become so predictable that you have top pair and you're always betting top pair, and then you're checking back with ace highs and certain like this, you become too easily read and exploitable from opponents that are paying attention. So you want to start thinking about maintaining a c-bet percentage that's probably, for most of you, I would say a lot lower, like something in the 60% range. And I say this in the video, or in one of the videos, where I talk about when you check the flop more often, you actually make your betting range stronger and you make your checking range stronger because you're keeping hands within both. And when you play No Limit Hold'em, right? Let's look at an example of how a hand could play out. If a flop comes, Jack 7 deuce, and I checked from the blind and you checked in position. If I know that you don't have like a pair of jacks, just like King Jack in your checking range, then the strength of your checking range is so shit. Like, what could you possibly have? The only strong hands you could have are sets, right? You don't have Jack 7 or Jack 3 or anything like that. So when I'm in the position where I know your range is so narrow in terms of what you can have in your value, I can bet turn, and if you call, bomb river. And over the long haul, your range as a whole cannot defend against that. You're just going to be so destroyed. So in your check back range, you need to have some hands that are, something like a King Jack. So how do you decide when you check back a King Jack, right? Well, we also talk throughout about different ways in which to randomize, right? One way you can do it, for example, let's say you were going for a 50% c-bet percentage, right? And you have King Jack. Well, if the king's on your left, maybe that's your aggressive bet, and when it's on the right, you can check. So that's one way to sort of like have an idea of what you're c-betting. Now, you always want to adjust your c-bet percentage from a place of what you think the right number should be. And that's going to take a little bit of study in terms of knowing how often you should c-bet in certain situations. But once you know that, now you add in another layer, which is, okay, how do I adjust my c-betting range against this opponent, right? So if I'm playing against Terrence Chan, for example, in No Limit, I know of his limit history, I'm going to think about probably c-betting a lower percentage of the time because he probably peels more than a No Limit player. Just for example, that may not be true, but it's something that I may do. Whereas like I'm going to have more like of my weak hands in my checking range where I would normally be betting against other people. Or against another person, let's say, who I know they play fit or fold, where if they don't actually have top pair better, they just fold. Well, I'm going to up my percentage to almost 100 against them. So I start from a baseline of like understanding what a c-bet range percentage should be and adjust from there. But against the very top players, you want to make sure that you have balance in both, because otherwise it's just going to be something that is going to cause you so many problems that compound on the turn and the river.
I think Phil Hellmuth proved that Terrence peels wider than most people do in No Limit Hold'em.
Well, that was limit to his credit.
Oh, right. Yeah, right. All right. If you want to check out more stuff on masterclass.com on Daniel Negrenu's course at masterclass.com. Again, there's amazing teachers there teaching the top of the field in the entire world in many, many fields, giving you how they do things. So fantastic value, masterclass.com. Check it out. Let's get back to the emails. Ross.
Email number 3.
Constantine writes, hey guys, love the show. I have a question regarding the legality of online poker in the U.S. I live in Colorado and is a regular of the few poker rooms and have recently been getting into online. However, from what I understand, it's illegal in Colorado, but with some loopholes. I've been playing microstakes on sites like Ignition and ACR and haven't been able to find a lot of info on the state of legality. What kind of consequence do you face for this? Holding funds or legal action? Also, if you guys can touch on the events that led to the online poker becoming illegal for some of us who are newer to the scene, that would be great. Thanks again. Keep it up. As far as consequences go, nobody's going to come and put you in handcuffs for playing microstakes no limit on ACR or Ignition. Holding funds the funds in general, whether it's the government holding it or the poker rooms having a difficult time getting you the funds because of the fact that there's this legality issue. Your funds, there's some risk there for you. Legal action, again, I don't think that's ever going to happen as far as individual people. But anybody else? Daniel, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is a situation of like Wild Wild West. Before, you were asking a little bit about the history, and before Black Friday, it was somewhat of an unregulated market. They finally came in and put a kibosh on a lot of what we were able to do, and it caused some problems. And like we've seen since, some sites go down, and you have no recourse. So if you're going to do something like this, you're like, as Adam said, it's not about, you're not going to jail for something like this, but they're certainly not regulated. And when you're talking about something that's unregulated, nothing can stop them from essentially shutting down tomorrow, taking all your money, and it just goes poof. So if it's an amount of money that is significant to you, then you're at risk always when you make a decision to play on an unregulated site. If you don't care about the potential of losing it, your criminal, like, what do you call it? Your exposure to any sort of criminal charges, I think, is minimal to nothing. But losing all of the money that you have in that account is a very real possibility, and it has happened before and will very likely happen again. I don't know with which specific sites, but it's a thing. So I would caution against it.
Well, it's a risk, right? Like, but I mean, so was playing on PokerStars for much of the 2000 to 2010 era. Like for a very long time, PokerStars wasn't a regulated site. You just had the trust in PokerStars, and the reason why wasn't because of some slip of paper from the Kanawaki Gaming Commission or even from later on the Isle of Man. It was just the way that PokerStars seemed to do things that gave people most of this confidence. And I think, if you're talking about, I agree. Don't ever, have funds on a poker. Don't have. I mean, it was the discussion with PartyPoker last week. Don't have funds on a poker site that you wouldn't have to that you would be scared to lose, even if it is one of the major regulated poker sites, because like in PartyPoker's case, you still might not get it back. Or even in PokerStars, I mean, I still carry a large balance on PokerStars. I'm still confident in them, but I mean, it's not a bank account. And hey, even recent history has shown that even bank accounts aren't even 100% safe, really. Yeah, legal wise, I agree with Adam and Daniel. Nobody's going to come knock on your door. Although in Washington State, I mean, playing poker and gambling on the internet is like still up there with robbing a bank in terms of is my understanding. So potentially you could get in serious trouble in certain places in certain states, because America is a crazy place sometimes.
Yeah, nobody's been brought to justice or anything in Washington as far as I've seen.
No, but I mean, I'm just saying that like when you actually like read the law, I think my understanding is that it's like there is actual real exposure there.
Yeah. And I would also recommend, if you want to know a bit more of the history of Black Friday and you're new to poker, watch Bet Raise Fold, the documentary. It's a great poker documentary about online poker.
Email number
004, hit my Jones up on the low.
Our last one of the day comes from Charlie. He says, I'm 21 and I just started a new Twitch poker stream because of your podcast. Wow. What are we, 9 episodes in? We're already inspiring new Twitch streams. Excellent. I've been playing poker since I was 8 and maybe the only kid that at 9 decided he wanted to win a WSOP bracelet. But because of school, I only recently dove into it about 6 months ago. That's when I realized I knew nothing except hand ranks. I studied my butt off and placed 5th at a WPT Tampa Hard Rock over the summer. Since then, I have decided to dedicate most of my free time to studying and playing. I just wanted to say thanks for pushing me over the edge to start a stream. I was a little nervous at the thought of being on camera, but it feels natural, and I'm stoked to push the stream to its full potential. Keep the podcast coming. And he tells us that his Twitch stream is twitch.tv/Dabestreg, DABESTREG. Oh, the best reg on the worst.
The best reg,
the
right?
Best reg is what do you think?
That's
like
pretty
that.
awesome to hear, Charlie. You know, like I think it's great that you're giving this a shot, and I would recommend, if I could, really follow along with what's happening with RunItUp.tv. Jason Somerville is essentially building a stable. Arlie Shaban is one of their recent Run It Up, and he basically was a guy who just streamed every day, built up an audience, and he's now a part of that team. So the potential's there. It's hard work. You look at a guy like Lex and all these things. One of the ways to build a following is to be a regular streamer. And, sometimes that might mean you're just, streaming for 4 people or 3 people, but eventually, your friends, their friends start to share with other friends and you build a following, and then who knows what's available to you. But that I think for most young players, the poker dream goes through streaming today. It's different than it used to be, the real poker dream for the future is I could be a streamer who makes money through subs, also makes money through poker, and has a fallback or whatever. It's a lot more of a stable way to do it, and just the way of the future.
Yeah, in our day, it was just like, I'm going to win the main event one day.
That's it. Simple. Yeah. All in or bust.
Darren said this was the last one. We've actually got one more.
Oh, we do. Sorry, my bad.
Give us the email number 5 drop. I haven't heard it in a while.
Email number.
It's number 5.
That one. All right. Ruben writes, hello, gents. Want to start off by saying amazing show. Thank you for providing content. Need some feedback on this hand I played that didn't work out for me. 9-handed, 5-5 blinds. I'm in the small blind with 750 back with the 9-5 of clubs. Under the gun +1 opens for 30. Cutoff calls, button calls, I call, and big blind folds. The flop, 9 of spades, 3 of diamonds, 6 of diamonds. 9, 3, 6, 2 diamonds. I check under the gun, bet +1 bets 50. Cutoff calls, button folds. I raise to 175. Under the gun +1 calls, and so does cutoff. Do we want to talk about this on the flop and pre-flop, guys?
You just go ahead and run through it, and then we'll get back. Just run through the whole hand because it's
turn. It's 4 spades, so now it's 9 of spades, 6, 3 of diamonds, 4 spades. So 2 spades, 2 diamonds on the turn. Our hero picks up the open-ended straight with top pair. Again, 4 spades board reading, or I didn't mention the board. I shipped the turn for 545, and under the gun +1 tank calls with only 100 behind. Cutoff tank calls with only 150 behind. Rivers the ace of diamonds. Under the gun +1 snap ships his last 100. Cutoff calls. Under the gun has 2 black queens. Cutoff has 2 black 6s for middle set. He scoops.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to be honest here, Ruben. This is just a very poorly played hand on your part in every way, because starting off, so the first raise, you're playing in a 5-5 game. The first raise is 6x. Okay, that's. I mean, I know that in cash games and smaller, games, people do open for a lot wider, but that just allows you from the small blind, which is the worst position, to correctly just play much tighter. You had 9-5 suited here against the raise and a call. I would honestly say it's probably correct to be folding as good as 9-7 and 9-8 suited. Actually, you can be properly folding. There's no antes in your game. You don't have to play a really bad hand out of position with 9-5 suited. You can wait for much stronger hands than that. I was going to say Terrence. Well, let's just go to the flop then. Now,
I would say it would cause me physical pain to fold 9-8 suited. Like I would actually need to bite down on a towel to be able to do that. But 9-5 suited is way out of range here.
9-8 suited. Yeah, 9-8 suited is it's not fun, but it's still probably the correct fold.
It might very well be from a GTO perspective, yeah, because like you said, it is 6x. You're out of position. It's an early position raiser who has lots of overpairs in his distribution. But still, it would be painful.
Right. So go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. So let's talk about the flop. He decides to essentially check raise against the under the gun +1 opener and the cutoff call. Daniel, it reminds me, like I said, I got an ad on Facebook for your masterclass, and you said something like there's no such thing as you're either value betting or you're bluffing. There's no such thing as a value bluff. I feel like this is almost a value bluff, and especially probably the turn shove that we're going to talk about is like a value bluff. We're not sure what exactly you were trying to do. Did you raise here because you think your 9 to the 5 is the best hand, or are you trying to bluff out over pairs and better top pairs? Not sure what's going on.
You're essentially bluffing here. Your perfect way to describe it, Terrence, that it's like a value bluff, because a lot of people make the mistake of thinking I have top pair, I need to protect it. But you have to look at the situation, right? The under the gun player made a decent sized bet after raising, and he's been called. So what is the player calling with, right? The player called to raise the fourth and still continues after a 9-6-3 board. So your 9 is very vulnerable. It's like it could be the best hand. You could be against a draw and ace king. It's very possible, but it's too flimsy and too weak of a hand for you to think that you need to protect it, because you have what's called a crying call here. I would not fold your hand on the flop, but I would never raise here. I would actually call and hope to see if the turn go check if I don't improve, and maybe win it with a showdown on the river. But the check raise here is far too aggressive with your hand. What you have is a check call.
Yeah, and then the turn is a 4, and then now they've both called you, and you decide to go all in, and now you are absolutely in bluff territory, because there's nothing that would have called you that essentially you could be like, because now you can remove ace king from the range. There might be some flush draws in there. If only one guy called, like, maybe you could talk yourself into saying, okay, he's got like a straight draw, flush draw. There's a lot of draws out there, and maybe I can blast him off this hand. But no, it's pure insanity. The way that I like to think about a lot of the time threshold, when Daniel says, the minimum I would call with pre-flop is 9-8 suited, and maybe not even that, is like, what's the minimum hand you would almost need to have in this situation? And I would say that if you had a set of threes, this would be the correct way to play this hand. If you had pocket threes, you call the raise pre-flop, you could check raise this call and shove the turn. Even if you had 9-6 and for some reason you got in there, so you ended up flopping top 2 pair, and you decided, because you're with 9-6, you're still ahead of all the over pairs, you're blocking 2 of the sets. Like, if you got broke here with 9-6, I would say, okay, well, you called a little light pre-flop, but you also did get unlucky. If you flopped a set of threes, I would say, damn, that's just bad luck. That's nothing you could do about that. But with just pair of 9s, no kicker right now, you've sort of punted $545 into the ocean.
I will say this. I will actually say this. Based on the pot size, you made it 175 and got called in a couple spots. I don't hate this play nearly as much as I do the flop play. But understand, this turn bet, you're actually bluffing. What you're hoping to have happen here is the under-the-gun player think, wow, this player is playing this hand so strong into 2 people, he must have a set, so my queens are no good. And then maybe fold, and now maybe, this is like very, very optimistic thinking, you get called by like ace queen of diamonds, who, flopped in a flush draw, and now you actually turn, your 9 into the best hand. So it's very like creative thinking. And because you have outs now with the 5, because you've got the 3, 4, 5, 6, you can catch a deuce or a 7 most likely. This play is far less egregious than the one on the flop. Having said that, I still probably would have, shut it down and check folded. But if you are going to bet, you could actually, make a smaller bet and then have to call it off. But like, this bet gives you the maximum opportunity to actually do what you are doing, which is bluffing.
But even still, like, they're like, yeah, like, I hear what you're saying, where you've inflated the size of the pot, and now you actually have enough leverage to blast people out of there. Although if you're caught making plays like this all the time, you will have no leverage, because people will just be like, you're a maniac. But even still, you have so many, like, you can have spades here. Like, you have so many backdoor combinations of spades, and those are the hands probably that you want to blast off with, I think, in this situation. Although, like I said, the 5 pick giving you an open ender gives you a lot of equity. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think the lesson here, and Terrence said it eloquently, is that, like, when you're making a bet, you need to think about, am I value betting or am I bluffing? Because you're not doing both, right? So on this flop, it sounds to me, based on, and it's my guess, that you were value betting, which means thinking you had the best hand and trying to protect it. And on this turn, I would hope that you would know, with 2 players calling, that you're bluffing, right? So before you actually decide if you're going to make a play, understand, do I want to be called, or do I want my opponent to fold? Do I want them to fold because I want to protect my hand? Like, just get clear on what you're doing before you do it, and don't just go through the motions, and sort of, have a plan. You mentioned in your email you're not a pro, and that's great. And I really appreciate hands like this, because I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate to, making mistakes like this, because everyone talks on TV about, oh, you got to play aggressive. You got to be aggressive. It's like, you do, but you got to know the right spots to do that. And multi-way pots a lot of the time are not the time to be overly aggressive with marginal hands.
All right, let's move on. We have one hand, and I want to get to it, but we have a new drop, as far as I understand, Ross.
You're gonna get these hands!
Oh my God.
None of us had any idea what that was.
That scared me. What the hell?
It's a Halloween drop there.
No, it's not Halloween. It was sent to me by listener Joseph on Twitter, and it is a wrestler on WrestleMania. He's calling out Brock Lesnar there. He's gonna get these hands. And I think that's what Terrence should start saying when during his weigh-ins.
That'll happen.
Instead of your come out to that, that'd be good. All right, it comes in on Twitter from at Bobby Winger, who sends us a hand from from a PokerStars tournament. He's got Ace King in late position. He's got about 65 big blinds he starts the hand with. He makes it 2x or just over 2x in late position. Everybody folds to the small blind who flats, and the big blind who's got about 100 big blinds now makes it 10 BB to go. And Bobby is confused on what to do here. He ends up thinking that re-raise by the big blind to 10 big blinds was he wouldn't do that with aces or kings, and he shoves. I want to get both of your guys' take on that hand.
Yeah, so I watched the video, and I'm going to say that I think you played the hand exactly perfect, but your thought process as to why might have been a little bit off. His raise size is pretty darn standard there. That's not like what if he's going to re-raise there with any hand, the aces or kings, like that's not a very big raise. Like 10 bigs from like a 2.5 with a small blind call is not very big. And I noticed that on your screen, I looked at his video that he's using a HUD, so he's got stats, but you want to like be careful with stats when there's a very small sample size, right? If you've only played like 40 hands with someone and you notice like, okay, they've only 3-bet once, that doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't like a prime squeeze spot, right? Anytime you open and a small blind flats, which they shouldn't be doing too often theoretically, and a big blind re-raises,
especially when you open late. Which is the
that
case here.
Forces your hand. Okay, with a hand like Ace King, that's got to be in your 4-bet and go range. And I like your sizing. You could have jammed here, but you made it 67,000 on the 20,000 range, which I thought is really, really good. So I think you played the hand exactly as you should, but your reasoning behind like why he couldn't have aces or kings, that's flawed thinking. Because if he had aces or kings, what exactly do you think he would have raised to? The blinds are 1 in 2,000. You made it 4,500. Small blind calls 45. He makes it 20, right? That's actually a normal raise. It's not gonna. You shouldn't like make assumptions about what that sizing means in terms of what he can have. You have an ace and a king, of course, which blocks aces and kings. So that would be one of the reasons why you maybe don't give him credit for it. But most importantly, the issue here is because it's a squeeze spot with that small blind there. There's a lot of value for a player in the big blind there to have like ace 4 offsuit occasionally and just re-raise and take it. So essentially risking 20,000 to win the 4,500 each of you put in, which is 9 plus the other antes. So it's like you're essentially laying 2-1 that both players fold, or 1 calls and you can see a flop with. So a lot of players you'll learn after time like are very squeeze happy. So in spots like that, especially because you were in middle to late position, you're kind of forced in with a hand as strong as Ace King, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that fully, and I'll even add, especially if you get known as a person who folds a lot after opening, you're going to get squeezed even more often. Daniel said with the raise, the 4-bet size to, I don't remember what he made, but I think 75,000 out of his.
He made it 67,000, and he had 75,000 behind.
Right, so it essentially isn't all in. There's no difference between that and all in because he's not 4-bet folding. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I still like it. I still like, theoretically leaving yourself a little bit of room. Like in some tournaments, people will actually just call the bet, like, which is kind of silly because they're calling to see a flop, and then you're going to go on any flop anyways because you're already priced in. But you actually could get some extra value there by making it 67. And theoretically, if you do have aces or kings, have making it 60,000. A lot of people are not. You don't play every hand GTO in the sense of thinking that like, oh, they know exactly what to do and they know that this is an all-in. This is essentially an all-in. Some people don't. So give them an opportunity to make an extra mistake. True. Give them an opportunity to make an extra mistake, but in doing so, and this is the sort of essence of GTO versus exploitative, you're also giving yourself an opportunity to make a mistake. Whereas, you have situations like this. It's like, okay, you have ace king of clubs and it comes 6, 7, 8 of hearts. Like the guy jams and you still have to call, like you said, like, and maybe you can talk yourself into that. And then, or other times in the futures, if this is the only hand that you would make this sizing with, then that can get you in trouble in other ways if people start learning about that. So it's not necessarily, I think, as easy as saying like, oh, you can get them to make mistakes, because you yourself can also make mistakes if you're not balanced correctly. I'll say this, and I should add this last bit. Like, so if you're going to not go all in, right, which is essentially what your raise sizing is, then you have to make a much smaller re-raise. So your first open was to 4,500 called. He makes it 20,000. Like, you want to make it like 37,000. If you plan on having some balance and some bluffs in here, where you're doing that with like ace 4 suited occasionally, as a bluff. You want to make it much smaller or all in. There's the kind of like middle of the road raise size you made is not as good as either slightly smaller or just all in.
And I think, Daniel, you'll agree with me that we both probably prefer jamming to making it whatever 40,000.
Yes, certainly with like it's certainly in a tournament too. Like a lot of it, if you're in a cash game, people are squeezing a little bit less often, I think, and well, actually that's not necessarily true, but
they squeeze more often because there's antes. That's sure. Probably the main reason. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks again, Bobby. He writes, by the way, love the podcast. You guys doing some reviews. I would love to know if this was a punt or a cooler and how my bet sizing. So I'm guessing he lost the hand, but he doesn't tell us.
That would be cooler. That's clearly cooler. If you got called by a better hand when you have ace king and you're 40 big blinds deep, it's a cooler generally.
So thanks to Bobby for sending in that hand. All right. That is going to wrap it up. Check out our subreddit. We do have the subreddit. Reddit.r//DAT Poker Podcast or DAT Poker Pod, right?
Yep. Yes, DAT Poker Pod.
DAT Poker Pod. Check it out. Head on over there. We have discussion about each show. Ross posts each show there, and we have people coming in and talking about the different things that we talk about in the show, and we're going to respond to you guys. So head on over there, and we can talk about some of the stuff. It's great to get some feedback. Poker this week. Terrence, I know you're going to be fighting this week, training, getting going for your fight next month. Daniel, what are you up to poker-wise this week?
What am I up to poker-wise this week? I'm going to a movie premiere tomorrow night, which I'm super excited about. I'm actually have a cameo in it. It's another Joseph Kahn film called Bodied, which essentially is about like a white college kid who wants to be a battle rapper, but is going over all the words he's not allowed to say, essentially. So, and then on the next night, I'm going to be seeing Shin Lim, who won America's Got Talent. I think he's like the best card magician I've ever seen in my life. So far, I haven't mentioned playing any poker at all because I don't think I will be. I'm going to be having some fun this week, going to the hockey games and enjoying life, hitting the gym. Might start doing some two-a-days and propose a fight to Terrence Chan in a weight class that is suitable for me.
Don't we weigh the same?
No, I'm 100. I'm like 167.
Oh, okay. So I got. Wow, I'm giving up 25 pounds to you. That's something.
Yeah.
All right.
You have that technique shit and all that. You're going to do those.
It's highly overrated.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks to you guys for getting together this week, doing the show. Thanks to you out there for listening. We will talk to you next week.